Hey guys, so today we're going to make one of my favorite breads in the world, Hokkaido Milk Bread. Now it's really simple and it's kind of like an Asian brioche and I love that. And we will start with 9 grams of instant yeast for the recipe. Now next we're going to make TANGZHONG, which allows elasticity and sweetness and softness, which just takes your bread to an entirely different level. I always boil it from a really low heat for a really long time to make sure I make it extra stretchy, and I really enjoy my bread to be just slightly chewier than normal. Almost 1% mochi like. So I stir it with a whisk and I make sure to get out all the lumps of flour and bring it really slowly as it thickens into a nice paste. Now I will slow the recording down in a while just so you can look at the texture and compare it to yours. As you can see, it's thickened quite a bit and now it's very warm. I have it at about 180 degrees and I add 1 tablespoon of cold milk just to cool it down fast, and I'll be adding another tablespoon just to dilute it slightly and cool it down further. Now you've got that amazing glutinous paste. We are just going to stir it up a little bit more and then put it aside and prepare the rest of our recipe. Now we are adding some full cream to some bread flour, and I've put 50 grams of sugar and a 30-20 ratio just for some depth to the flavor. We have our yeast and now we're adding some milk. And all your TANGZHONG to the batter mix. Now 16 milliliters of melted butter, scraping off my little spatula, and finally 1 large egg that I beat beforehand, and also make sure to remove the white stringy bits first because I feel that makes so much difference to the texture. Now some salt, and we will be kneading it with our bare hands. Now I kind of just push it while grabbing it with my hands in the bowl in an inwards fashion, which kind of sees me scraping off the dough from the sides. Now I do this quite vigorously, but not for too long, and I lift it up sometimes to give it that extra stretch just to make the gluten work a bit more for me. Now this is a true workout for your hands, so you want to stretch a bit before you start, but it's entirely rewarding when you taste the end product. Now I have some OCD, so I make sure to get all the dough bits from the side of the bowl, and when you can't do this, your dough is just about ready. I like to put it on the counter, do a bit of a knead, and I kind of roll it inwards with my palms, non-stop. Just to make sure it's all mixed and delicious. Now I pack it into a bowl, put it nicely in the bowl, Make sure I leave the towel on top so it stays nice and moist. And now let it rise for about 1 hour. Next, we are going to use 10 grams of butter, more or less it's up to you, to make sure the bread doesn't stick to the pans and you get the extra delicious buttery flavor. You can use a brush, but I prefer to use my hands to make sure I get it into every corner, nice and smooth and as evenly as possible. You can also use a round pan and you can make little buns instead, but I prefer my bread in loaves, and if I do buns, I prefer them with a nice filling inside. Now really just get it into every single corner just to make sure the bread doesn't stick. And how you can check your dough is when you push it in with your finger, it doesn't spring back. And that's when you know the first rise is done. I will be splitting this now into different sections to give it another roll and another rise. What you want to do this round is kinda knead your dough really gently, flatten it lightly, and then fold it in half before you repeat the flattening, and then roll it up into a nice small section of the loaf. And now into the pan for a second rise. Do this with the rest of the sections, and be sure to be gentle because you don't want to squeeze out all the air from the first rise, and keep the bread extremely fluffy. You can use a rolling pin as well, but I'm a lot more comfortable with using my hands so I can gauge exactly how much pressure I'm putting on the dough. And you know, it's more fun to get your hands dirty anyway. Now I'm leaving quite a bit of space between my individual sections for the loaf because the bread will rise again and the loaf pan will fill up. So there is no worry if your pan is too big. And if it's too small, you can bake it in 2 batches. That's entirely okay. It'll be equally delicious, but make sure you do all your rolls for the second rise in this round, and you can transfer it later. Now I didn't measure it for the second loaf pan as well, so it's a bit uneven, but I'm hoping that it turns out okay. This is the egg wash for the top of your loaves, and it's 1 tablespoon cream, 1 tablespoon water, and 1 beaten egg. Now after the second rise, they were puffed up really beautifully, and we are going to spread that egg wash all over the tops of the loaves before we send them into the oven. Next, we are going to pop them in the oven for 28 to 32 minutes before retrieving these delicious babies and letting them cool on the wire rack for about 10 minutes before taking them out of their pans. I cover them with towels just to prevent the moisture from escaping. And then also take a serrated knife to make sure all the edges are out the corners of the pan just in case it sticks. But this is just a precaution that you can skip if you don't want to. With the knife, I push the edges of the bread away from the baking pan because they've puffed up so much and sometimes the egg wash causes it to stick slightly. Now we can slide out the amazing loaves and your kitchen will smell so delicious, courtesy of the fresh bread. Ease the loaves out gently, make sure they're not broken, and leave them to cool. And there you have it. Now when you break them, they should feel super light and super fluffy and tear off so easily. They weigh pretty hefty because of the butter and the richness, but they taste exactly like a cloud. We can see the delicious air pockets in the loaf, and we can see how that has risen perfectly and how that will just melt in your mouth. These are the rolls that we made for the second rise, and they're still visible here, which I quite enjoy. And the tops are lovely and shiny. If they do begin to brown too much, you can put a piece of aluminium foil, shiny side down, on top of the bread as it's baking. It does not affect the bake time, but does prevent the tops from getting burnt. And there you have it, extremely light and extremely fluffy Hokkaido milk bread. Super easy to make without machines, without dried milk. This is my rendition of it. I hope you enjoyed so much with delicious salty butter. Thank you for watching WOKHEY. Subscribe for more food and music and art and fun. And I will see you guys really soon on IKIGAIJIN.